welcome back to the class, everyone. A few weeks ago, we made a video and talked about the importance of the way you place your characters into the squad and how that can actually have real changes for your squad's performance. Today, very similarly, but a little bit different, I want to take a look at the importance of the turn order you have for select squads. So again, this video is not a continuation of the last one in the sense that you want to have this character in this slot or you want to have this character in that slot. If you do want to check out the importance of where you place your characters in the team, do check out the video below in the description. But the whole purpose of today's video is talking about turn order, or in other words, how you want your speeds structured on each character for who you want to go first, who you want to go second, who you want to go third. And a few disclaimers before we jump right into this. Number one, the way that we have the characters put into the squads before us right now is the order that we want them to go in. So just take note, you're not supposed to use Moff Gideon lead instead of Veers. You're not supposed to use Pow lead instead of Mon Mothmas. And you're not supposed to use Seventh Sister instead of Grand Inquisitor. You're supposed to have this character the fastest, this character the second fastest, third fastest. You're still supposed to use the leaders that you're all used to. So we're going to be taking a look at 10 teams that are pretty important. I will say there are some other teams that want maybe one character to be able to go out in first, 501st, Rex being a great example where he goes first and gives turn meter. But the point of this video is taking a look at teams that typically have several characters that want to fall in a specific order that can give you a better performance of them. So let's go ahead and get into this and talk about Imperial Troopers right off the bat. So this is not the end-all be-all of Imperial Trooper teams. You can make several different variations. Typically, you need to make sure you have Veers and Piet as being the two core units, but we're going to be working with this variation today, and we'll talk a little bit about the other ones. But more often than not, you want Moff Gideon to be the fastest Imperial Trooper in the team. And again, we're going to show our speeds. You don't have to have them this fast. This is a very old account. It's had a lot of time to do mods. So you don't need a 374 speed Gideon. If your fastest speed set for your Imperial Troopers is 340 or 320, that's fine. Just make sure these going first. And there's two reasons, actually there's three reasons why you really want Gideon to go first, depending on what you're going against. Typically, you want to be able to use Control the Situation. Control the Situation will knock down all of the enemy's turn meter. It'll reset them to 0, and it'll give you 25% again. Now you can come back, and all your troopers will be ahead of them because of the 25% turn meter, assuming you could get rid of the enemy turn meter to begin with. Then you can start off with an armor shred, getting rid of some defense initially, so that more of your characters can do more damage when they're going in. The other nice perk to this is you get to apply Demoralize, which just makes the enemy team do less damage in general. So there are several perks to Moff Gideon going first before everyone. He's going to be able to drop their turn meter, make sure you do more damage, and make sure the enemy team does less damage. Even if they're never going to turn, if they have a counter or something like that, it's very important. Next up, we want Piet to go. And the reason why we want Piet to go next is because he is going to apply Imperial Ambition on Dark Trooper. This means whenever Piet uses his basic, whether he's countering, he's assisting, or it's just his turn, he will be calling in Dark Trooper, which is the majority of damage on this team. After that, we want range, and this isn't as important as the other two are, but range will just stomp here. He will call in several characters, and when he does that, he uses his steady ability. He is going to be increasing the number of Emperor's Trap that's going around. Emperor's Trap increases whenever a trooper takes a turn and whenever they assist. So what's going to end up happening is by the time Moff Gideon has gone, he's taken 2 turns. Piet will have gone, he'll take in 1 turn. Range Trooper will have gone, he'll have actually kind of taken 3 total motions. He'll move, someone will assist, he'll move again, and by now, we have several stacks of Emperor's Trap. Dark's going to go, and Dark can either give turn meter depending on what you're going against, or he can just punch someone in the face for a lot of damage, because not only is everything perfectly set up with Emperor's Trap now, but he just does a lot of good damage in general. And the reason why we want Veers last here is because his basic will give speed up, and depending on what you're going against, you might not want to use the AoE. Let's say there's a Malak on the enemy team and you get feared and you get stuck behind him, and that's not great. And the basic will give speed up to a random character. And the reason why we want to avoid this is because it can throw the whole turn order of the entire team off. Because when anyone gains a buff, due to his own unique, they are going to end up gaining turn meter. Actually, I believe it's his leadership. Yeah, his leadership's 10% turn meter whenever anyone gains a buff. So you can kind of throw, if you have Veers slotted like second or third or something like that, it can mess up this order and let it be less ideal than it should be. This happens to me a lot in 3v3s, and it can be quite annoying because sometimes that turn order really does matter for what you're going against, trying to take, again, Darth Revan or something to the sort down. Next up is going to be Mon Mothma. This one is not the way you think it would be. So Mon Mothma's team in general, Kyle Katarn is going to go first, and that's not because he's modded fastest, but because his unique gives him 30% turn meter, assuming he's in a mostly rebel fighter team. Mon Mothma not being a rebel fighter, so you kind of get that taken away from you. That being said, he's going to go first, but what you need to make sure happens is that Pow goes immediately after him, because when you call everyone to assist, if Hoth Rebel Scout here doesn't get the 40% chance to increase everyone's turn meter, then you really don't have a turn meter train. So the whole goal here is for Kyle Katarn to go first. Great if you get the turn meter from Hoth Rebel Scout assisting, but if you don't, Pow here is going to be able to be the fastest naturally, because he also gains turn meter 5% when anyone uses their basic ability. So Kyle Katarn, you can choose to use the basic with him. You also have everyone else using their basic, although I don't think he doesn't count himself, so it's 20% turn meter. So now Pow can go immediately after Kyle Katarn, who started with 30% turn meter, and then you have another chance to gain turn meter from Hoth Rebel Scout assisting, and then Kara can finally go and reduce everyone's turn meter with her AoE, and you can not totally loop someone, but you can get a ton of turn meter and make it very annoying for the enemy team, whether offensively or defensively, to be able to finally catch up to this. And then Mon Mothma and Hoth Rebel Scout, they can both be last or slow. You can, I don't know, I guess I have a speed set because it doesn't really need anything else, and then Mon Mothma has tenacity because the team shares tenacity, and that's kind of fun. But for the most part, those first three characters are the most important for that team. Moving on to the Inquisitors, and I do want to make a note, if you have third sister, this works with her too. She just fits in with ninth sister. So this one's fairly important because you want seventh sister to be able to go first, so that she can remove a taunt and start applying several stacks of purge onto the enemy, because then next up, fifth brother is going to go, and he's going to do that to all the enemy characters, but typically she can daze someone in the very beginning, which is also nice in case they were going to end up gaining turn meter on top of that. And then Grand will go. By the time he is moving, if you have him in this order, everyone on the entire enemy team has purge, because our good friend Fifth Brothers here is irresistible when he uses his AoE ability here as getting purge, and then he can go and he will get irresistible ability block, because when they have purge on the enemy team, the ability block cannot be resisted. So you end up getting this really nice lineup of dispelling a taunt, on top of that getting everyone with purge, getting a clutch daze out there, and then ability blocking everyone on top of it. The last two don't really matter. I guess eighth brother's kind of nice if he goes here, because you want him to take more turns, and then the tank's just kind of the tank. Ninth sister does have an ability that lets her taunt, but at the end of the day, anytime any Inquisitor loses protection, she also taunts, and then Reva pre-taunt. So no matter what you're really doing there, those last two slots aren't all that important, but you want those first three to be in the order they currently are. The next one is not going to be as pivotal as some of the others for their counters to work, but I do want to mention this because there is an ideal turn order for the Starkiller team. And again, I won't lie, I was watching a stream one time, and the guy's Emperor Palpatine moved first versus Rey, which anyone who's ever done Starkiller versus Rey knows that your Emperor Palpatine probably shouldn't be faster than your Mara Jade, but he won. So the fact of the matter is most Starkiller teams will beat most Rey teams, which is the most normal counter for this entire team. But there is an ideal way to do this so that you can kind of increase your chances against those more difficult comps. Mara Jade obviously wants to go first. That's really not that hard. Her base speed is very high on top of that. So you want to be able to go first so you can start applying debuffs so her and Emperor Palpatine can gain turns. And once they gain turns, they do a lot of other fun stuff. That being said, you want Palpatine to go next typically, especially if you ever place this team on defense, which I don't really love its defensive viability, but if you do want to do that, Palpatine will then get everyone with offense up, and then Vswos will go and she will give everyone defense penetration up. And now you have this really nice setup where Starkiller is about to assist a ton because of how Mara Jade and Palpatine's kits work, and he's going to be getting called to assist with offense up and defense penetration up. I do like to have Old Ben or whoever your Jedi is, really doesn't matter, before Starkiller as well, because Starkiller will give damage immunity and taunt to his Jedi tank whenever he uses a special ability. So if your Old Ben goes right after Starkiller, then he immediately already drops one of those turns of taunt and damage immunity. If he goes before, he gets 2 full turns there. So having everyone just a little bit faster than Starkiller is ideal. And really, Starkiller is going to be assisting so much. That's where the majority of his damage is coming from. He doesn't really, it is nice when he takes turn, but he doesn't really need to take turns to annihilate the entire enemy team. He can do that quite fine with his basic. So you can leave him a little bit on the slower side, at least in comparison to the rest of the team. He's mostly there for damage, and again, he's getting called in to assist due to the GAC Omicron assisting whenever a Sith uses a basic ability, of which will happen a ton. Next up is going to be Bounty Hunters. You can either use Aura Lead or Boss Lead. It doesn't really matter for this one, but you want to have Boss go first. And the reason why isn't just because he throws up a nice taunt. That is very nice. But because he's going to give himself Frenzy with Predator Instincts. This will happen on offense and defense, by the way, so that is pretty clutch. Immediately after that, if you can, it's, you know, not the biggest deal in the world if you can, but if you can, have Grief go literally 1 speed later so they can't be interrupted. Grief will call a Mass Assist. At this point, if you're targeting the weakest character, you'll be halfway through your contract. Now, Boss will get another turn because he had Frenzy from taunting, and he will use Hunting Party, and you will again get another 5 hits on the enemy target, meaning you should have contract by now. And with the way that the rest of these kits work, Mando gives more turn meter to himself than he does the other characters. He only gives half to them. He will actually functionally go next. And he's already used his basic, so he has crit chance up. You already have contract because you've already hit the weakest character 10 times, or with Aura Lead, just any character 10 times, or however that works. You immediately get to use your Disintegrate right off the bat and just delete a character. This is very helpful for a lot of teams that have one specific damage tier, like Qui-Gon Jinn as Jedi Anakin. You can Disintegrate him, by the way, before killing Qui-Gon Jinn. I don't think it's working as intended, but it's how it is. It also works great for Dash or Bam or whoever else you're trying to take out right in the beginning of the match. You do want Mando. Let's show a big picture here. You do want Mando to be slowest here. If he is not slowest and you're using Aura Lead and you're trying to do something really fancy like 2-shot a JMK, you need all the characters to go before him. And that turn meter doesn't really matter against JMK because JMK doesn't allow for turn meter. Zam honestly can kind of just go anywhere. She's really not that important. I do like her third-ish or even first or second because her speed applies to everyone with her GAC Omicron. So again, you don't really want her slowest. That's kind of where Mando's slot is. And then if you are using Boss Lead, assuming you have access to the weakest character, any other bounty hunter can go here. Like, you can put Dengar there, that's fine. But if you're using Aura Lead because you can't get to the weakest character, that is the optimal way to do it. Next up is going to be a little bit of a different team, and I don't actually use this team, but it is pretty sneaky how it can work. And good news about this team, while there is a specific turn order you want, you don't really need the team to have a ton of speed because of how BB-8's unique works. He's going to give 8% turn meter to the entire team per droid, which, you know, 5 times 8 is 40, math. So you don't need to be very fast to be able to get this to work. But the turn order that we want is actually R2 first. And the reason why is his move Improvise, which he will default to, will put Burning out on the enemy team. Burning essentially makes it so that the enemies can't avoid the following hits. Assuming it lands, I guess that's the RNG we're dealing with, but it completely destroys their evasion. So all the following hits, we don't really have to worry about them having issues. Next up, we want Sora to go for 2 reasons. Number 1, she has defense down on her AoE. On top of that, she gives target lock, which is going to be helpful for our good friend T3, who is up next, because when he uses his Carbonite projector, all of these effects are going to be irresistible if the enemy had target lock on them, which Sora already did that. We made sure that they couldn't dodge it because we put Burning out, target lock out, all these debuffs out. Now, the enemy team should have about 20 debuffs total, if not more so, depending on what else is going on in the kit. And if we look at T3 Zeta, he's giving 8% critical damage per debuff. So, you know, you do the math there again, it's 160% extra critical damage. Now, IG-88 gets to go. And when we look at his kit, he's getting, you know, that 160%. He's also getting some defense penetration from T3. He's going to be getting an extra 100% offense because the entire enemy team is debuffed. And on top of that, Swordy also applied defense down. So he's going to come in with the rapid fire AoE and just do a ton of damage. Even if he can't really kill them, he can apply a few ability blocks and keep them from cleansing and just make this team a real terror on defense, or even something on offense. BB-8 doesn't really matter. He just wiggles. He can go anywhere. You could have him go first, second, third, fourth, fifth. It does his thing. Good job, BB-8. He's really just there for the turn meter in the very beginning. And yeah, he has some nice counters that are also pretty cool. Next up is going to be Bam. This is more of the OG school, or the OG Bam team. You want Queel to go first, and the reason why is he's naturally the fastest with his base speed. He will then go ahead and give everyone else 20% or 25% turn meter on top of that. Then Bam can go into what we refer to as his poop stance when he goes to use all of his whistling birds. And then the rest of the team, IG-11 is really nice because he can put irresistible tenacity down. All tenacity down is irresistible. I don't know why I said that. On the entire enemy team. Dash can go then. You don't have to use Dash, but if you have him, you can. Any character with an AoE works here. Kara works here. Dengar works here. Quite frankly, even Canderous works here, depending on what your roster needs. They will go use the AoE. They will give more turn meter, because that's how Bam's leadership works. He gives turn meter when the enemy takes damage. Dash does a ton of damage because of the amount of times that his AoE hits on the enemy team. And then you have Nesco. Nest not only does damage, again, getting you to that full 20 birds, but you also pull back 40% of their turn meter because they had tenacity down, and they couldn't really resist, or sorry, remove 20% of turn meter from each enemy that had full health, which they should by this point still. And then your Bam gets to go. Not only is the enemy team taking a ton of damage by now, you've kind of looped them, and Bam can just go and one-shot someone because he has 20 birds. And they can't even revive, nor can they hide from it because he gets to avoid both of those things due to his kit. Next up is going to be Bad Batch. This one is one of the most important ones. Bad Batch is a team that has a very high ceiling if you understand their turn order. If you don't, they can kind of just crash and burn. The reason why Echo needs to go first is not only will he give the turn meter to the rest of the team through his Never Any Doubt ability, where he gives turn meter based on how many buffs the enemy team has, but once Tech goes next, it's important here because his stun doesn't stun unless they were dazed or target locked, and you need Echo to go first to be able to daze them. So Echo will go first, daze them. Tech will go next. Even if there's a big speed gap between the two of them, the turn meter can breach it depending on how many buffs the enemy team have. And then you want Wrecker to go next. Wrecker, if you're using the full Bad Batch team, he will then put our defense up on everyone, which due to Hunter's lead will end up giving you not defense penetration, but true damage. So now Hunter can go, he can swap around turns, he can give more turn meter. Omega's up next, you can also give more turn meter and of the sort, and you can just essentially throttle the entire team. The reason why you want Wrecker next isn't necessarily for the stun. Hopefully Tech should have done his job with that, but it's for the true damage. That way that both Hunter, when he goes, when he passes his turn, when that character goes that the turn was passed to, when Omega's assisting during all these, you shouldn't just be doing their nice, really good damage via debuffs and exposes, but on top of that, you should be dealing true damage to the entire team. So that's kind of how you want that team to go. Next up is going to be QuiGo Boom. And the idea behind this one is you want Qui-Gon Jinn to go first. He will immediately rip off whatever taunt is there. A very common counter to Qui-Gon is actually the Bad Batch team we just looked at. If you can get them fast enough to be able to go before the enemy team, he will go in, he will remove their buff and give offense up to your team for 3 turns. If you have Cam go next, he can then apply Armor Shred to whatever character he wants because there's now no longer a taunt. And then Jedi Anakin is posed to use his overpowering assault with all the huge offense that's coming from Qui-Gon Jinn lead, all the reduced armor from Cam's or from his special, as well as the offense up that we got earlier from ripping the buff off. And you might just annihilate the character that Armor Shred on, depending on how tanky they were to begin with, or at least get them really stinking close to the point where Ahsoka and Mace and the rest of the team can come back around and really just take him out. So having Qui-Gon, Cam, Jedi, Anakin in that order, the last two really aren't all that important. In fact, it doesn't even need to be those 2 characters. It can be GK and Barriss, or it can be Plo Koon. It doesn't really matter. These 3 kind of do most of the work in this team. Last up is going to be Resistance, and this one, really the only one that you want to be very right out in front is going to be Resistance Hero Finn. And the reason why, this team has a lot of turn meter dealing with exposes, and he just has naturally the highest base speed. If you compare him to Zori, he's about 13 speed ahead of her, so he's a little bit easier to get to ridiculous speeds. And this is nice because Zori has made the team still fairly relevant if you're following all the rules of her kit. You're going to get 35 speed on top of that. And then again, once you get the exposes going between all the characters, especially with Rose in there as well, helping generate some nice tenacity up, you can just take down a lot of enemy teams before they even really know what they're doing. Primarily, I like this a little bit more on offense with the GAC Omicron, because then you can control, you can specifically pass the turn from Resistance Hero Finn to Zori, where she can use her Mass Assist on a bunch of characters that have exposes because she has her Omicron. The AI will pass it to Resistance Hero Poe, which is okay, but might give the enemy a leg up if they don't use their abilities correctly, stunning whoever they need to stun, or getting stagger or breaking down, because the 2 of them don't have any exposes really between themselves. They're really going to rely on the rest of them to get the turn meter going. But at any rate, you do want them to go first to start causing problems for specific counters like Jedi Knight Revan. So that is going to be the video for today. I realized, again, there are other team comps out there, especially ones that want at least 1 character to go first to start feeding turn meter. But for the most part, that is our top 10 for turn order. But until the next time, guys, stay awesome.